Then, within a very short time, within about 3 months after the Apple I, I sat down and said, I want to design a computer from scratch based around that color idea I had. At the core of it, I didn't design a computer, I designed a color generator. And after the color generator, above that, I put out the signals that would run a computer. And then I built the computer around that. So I really started with a color generator. And the first time I got there and I typed a number into memory and a blue square popped up on my TV, I called Steve Jobs over quick. I showed him. I could type all these different numbers in and colors show up on my TV. We both knew we had something so special. The world would have never expected a low-cost computer to have color, would have never expected it to be so easily manipulated. We could make every arcade game in the world eventually with this thing. We knew we had something big, so we didn't give this Apple II away. There was a big eureka moment seeing the color. And one day I sat down, I'd written my BASIC, and I put in a bunch of commands into my own BASIC for drawing lines and squares on your screen. And this BASIC was a language 5th graders are taught to use in school back then. So it was a very simple language. And I said, I wonder if I could write my breakout game as a program in BASIC. So simple. And I wrote a little command that created a row of bricks, and the bricks came down. I changed the color, and I changed a couple colors from 6 to 5 to 4. Oh, yes, I like those colors. And then I put in a paddle, and I designed how to have one little chip do 4 paddles in this machine. And then all of a sudden, in half an hour, I had a breakout game, and I had put it through about 50 different variations. I called Steve Jobs over, and he sat down, and I was shaking. I said, games are never gonna be the same now that they're software. It was another one of those eureka moments, really shaking. We really knew we had something big. We started showing this machine around cautiously. Trouble is, we were gonna be able to sell 1,000 of this new machine. We had zero money. Zero money. You have to find money. Sorry, you have to. We went to other companies that might give us, might buy it from us. And we were sitting in Commodore one day, and I'm sitting by Steve, and they said, what do you want for it? And Steve starts going, well, we'd like a few $100,000. I shut up quick. I'm just an engineer with a $25,000 salary. And it's $300,000, and we want jobs, and we want stock, and we want to be in charge of the program. And oh my God, I was so scared. They turned it down. They decided to do a cheat machine instead. And eventually we got to an angel, Mike Markkula. Mike Markkula had made his money in Intel and chips, and he retired from the rat race to look around for interesting things to do in electronics. And he came and he said that this home computer revolution was going to be real, and it was going to be worth $1 billion in 5 years. I thought, oh my gosh, the higher level up you go in society to people who are successful, have certain amounts of money, the more they're allowed to talk. They just talk bigger numbers. There's not anything more to it. So I didn't know a thing about business, and it was kind of funny. And I did have to decide to leave Hewlett-Packard, and that was a very tough one because I wanted to be very true to my own beliefs. But then I said yes, because I knew I could be an engineer, stay an engineer, and I didn't have to run a company and get kicked out. But in making that little decision, originally Steve Jobs and I were going to each have 26% of the company, and Mike Markkula was going to have 20% for investing basically millions of today's dollars. And after I was sort of holding out on not thinking I was going to join or not, then they decided that we'd each have 26%. And I realized, I didn't say anything, but I realized it was so the other two would have 52%, just in case. Anyway, we had to hire a president. Mike Markkula was our mentor. He'd been successful in business. He was going to run our marketing. He was very young, actually. He was going to run our marketing, and he said, we have to hire a president, somebody that makes things work. And Steve Jobs kind of wanted to be in control of everything, but he was still too young and naive, didn't have experience. Neither one of us had any business experience. So we met Mike Scott, and Mike Scott we really were impressed by him and decided to hire him to be our president and be in charge of things. And it was a very good thing for Apple, and he was our president until we went public. And then it came down, our first plastic case. This was the first time ever a computer would be in a plastic case. We found a very cheap process, a guy that makes motorcycle seats, and he had a foam process, and he could make these cases, but the trouble is, we'd put our board in, it would get hot, and the case would warp. It was awful, and how do we get it cooler? Well, Steve Jobs brought an engineer over from Atari, Rod Holt, and Rod Holt could design what's called a switching power supply that basically works like ones and zeros, but it doesn't get hot like my power supply did. So it was a very cool style power supply. It was futuristic, and that's what we put in the Apple II, so we wouldn't have to have a fan. And then for years and years after that, no Apple products were allowed to have fans because Steve Jobs always said, you've got to use your brain to get around the problems.